All right, we're here on a wintry, terrible Angeles Crest covered in gravel, and it is GR Corolla territory. This little thing is updated for 2025 with just a few things. Very happy to report this is still the most charismatic little hot hatch you can buy. I love this car. What I like about GR Corolla updates is they're always nerdy and always very granular. So let's start with the suspension. Suspension is same as before, which is non-adaptive, fixed damping suspension, but very well tuned. What they did was added rebound springs to the front and rear dampers to better control that sort of motion as the car comes up. There's a few percentage points more anti-squat. Toyota won't say exactly how much more. What does that mean for the non-nerd? What that means is there's more mechanical rear spring rate in the suspension. Effectively, the rear suspension is stiffer. Once you enter, you had a great idea what it would do at the end of the corner. You knew where you're gonna end up. And what's happening here now is the car actually responds to throttle input. It responds to different changes. It has a bit more attitude, a bit more aggression to it in the way it handles corners, which is very nice. It's still fundamentally kind of pushy, very stable car, but it is more suggestible to throttle, which is always a great thing, and I kind of love it. It's a very subtle change, though. If you told me that there was a change, I couldn't pick it out without driving the two cars back to back. Front end is now been reshaped for better cooling. So now the manual transmission cars get a new cooler on the passenger side, an extra coolant radiator basically that ties into the rest of the system, help keep the car cooler. While the automatic cars, which is the big headline thing, is you get an automatic with the 2025, this is non-auto, gets a transmission cooler on the driver's side. So with this car, you sort of have this one-sided thing, but it's fine. And the whole point of that is to make it better at the track, more track-worthy. There was overheating issues in the previous model years with these cars. The result of the front-end redesign is a car that looks worse. I just don't like it. It looks all shreddery and wide and terrible.
You are here because the outside world rejects you.
What they did really change was the all-wheel drive system calibrations. I'm not sure if it's a response to overheating on track, but now the modes are different. Now instead of the torque splits, 60-40, 50-50, 30-70, now you have GR4 normal, which is 60-40. You have track, which is actually a variable split between 60-40 front and 30-70 rear, and then you have gravel, which is fixed 50-50. You actually feel a good difference between the two. I like track the most on the road. Makes sense, right? Gravel mode feels pretty locked up, really tight, which makes sense for loose surfaces. It's a change in sort of how you have to think about which mode to choose, but each mode behaves fundamentally the same as before, and track mode being 30-70 now is interesting. At least a variable split is interesting. It's kind of like, remember WRX STIs used to get the variable center diff? The system works just like that. We talked about it a lot in another video about the 2024 GR Corolla, about how the all-wheel drive system works. It's the same rear 0.7% overdrive, all that stuff's the same. If you really want to know the details, go watch that video. Okay, omit all the nerd stuff, basically drive it in track. But even with all the changes, the GR Corolla is broadly still GR Corolling, you know, it's the same car. The rest of the body, the sheet metal is pretty much the same. The interior is the same. There's no updated infotainment. It's not the snazz of the Type R, and it's not the technological overload of the Elantra N, I don't think. But I still think it's a high quality object. I still think there's nice bits of design. I've always liked how this dome light is designed. The materials are okay. The dash design is okay, you know? Still got wireless CarPlay. Everything feels high quality. I don't feel cheaped out. Okay, blah, 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 interior updates, whatever the hell. Who cares? Does the Corolla still drive good with all those changes? So up until this point, fundamentally, you get an uglier Corolla that rides a bit stiffer around town. But up here, with those changes, very subtle, you know, little tiny rear geometry, all that stuff, this thing just drives just that much better. Instead of 273 pound-feet of torque or so you get in the 2024, now you get 295 across all 2025 GR Corollas, which nerds will know is the same torque figure as the Morizo. You don't get the short gearing from the Morizo, which is kind of a bummer, but the gears are already plenty short. I don't think you need much shorter gearing in this car, especially with the turbo torque. It's great that they're adding an automatic. It's great that more people can drive the car. Love that, you know, accessibility is great. But if you can handle mentally and physically driving a manual gearbox every day, it's such a mechanical experience, especially for a cable shifted gearbox. So much counterweight to it, so you feel this kunk, you know, as you go into gear. Speaking of the gearbox, there's another granular thing they changed. They actually changed the engagement of the clutch pedal for a more snappy feel, they say. Clutch shorter just comes up quicker, as far as I understand, the clutch pedal. One complaint, pedals are a bit far apart for heel toe. I have to do a full-on Keiichi Tsuchiya, like really roll my heel over, and I like more of a side of foot action, but kind of feels cool when you're doing it, so whatever, just get used to it. Car tells you to man up. I kind of love it. I love that it's also a Toyota. It's truly the only GR car that is a Toyota. This is built in Motomachi. It's built amongst the great Toyotas at the best factory where the LC500 was built, where the LFA was built, where the LS400 was built. And that's really cool because GR86, it's a Subaru. GR Supra, it's a BMW. And this is the one true performance Toyota you can buy. So it's kind of a halo product, and I've always loved that every year's changes are very nerdy. It just shows the love and care that goes into this car. They really deeply love that this is a Toyota product and that this is fundamentally their thing versus the other cars, which honestly the GR86 doesn't get a lot of year-to-year changes. Neither does the Supra. If we're talking about the trio, you know, the Elantra and Civic Type R and this still by far and away has the most character. It's still the most interesting to drive every day. It has the most little texture in the engine. It kind of vibrates through the cabin. This is an object of passion, full stop. And it's worthy of celebration for that. All right, so concluding thoughts. Very subtle changes add up to a pretty substantial, like, actual improvement in driving behavior. I think the best sporty cars on Earth move around a bit. They all have a bit of, you know, bit of joy in the back. They're moving around, they're yawing, which is one of my favorite words to use. This car has added a bit more of that pizzazz into it, a bit more of that rotation in the rear, something I really like. I think the pre-facelift cars always drove really tight, really on the straight and narrow. It wasn't necessarily understeery, it just wasn't playful. Now, with the changes, with a little bit of rear anti-squat, a little bit of damper retune, a little more torque, just that much nicer, just that much nosier, that much lovelier to drive. And it's really taken the Corolla into like a positive direction that I'm a big fan of, actually. The good news is, not ruined. What a lovely car to drive. I'd figure out how to swap on the old front bumper though.